Hey guys, welcome to my Irelia matchup guide and tier list. Today I'm going to be breaking down the 4 categories of Irelia matchups and how to play into them and how to also review your games versus these matchups and improve. What you'll notice is the order of the matchups isn't necessarily in terms of difficulty, it's in terms of complexity. So if we look, Vladimir is all the way at the bottom here, but he's not necessarily a very hard matchup. He's more complex in terms of your reference points and understanding what you need to do to win this matchup. The matchups at the top are very simple. It's not necessarily very easy to win these matchups, but it's very simple. You have one idea of how you want to play the lane, and you can, just by sticking to that, you can win the lane very easily. So how you want to play the first category of matchups is very simple. You win the trade if you land the E and you can all in. That's it. So what I would want to do in these matchups is let them push in the early waves, get the wave on your side, and all in down the long wave. So the most important thing is, again, getting the wave on your side at level 2 or level 3, finding that all-in window. The other thing that's very important is your E accuracy. If you're landing E's in this matchup, you're definitively going to be winning the trades. The next category are the Statcheck matchups. These matchups are the champions that you just out damage. You'll also notice that they're quite melee heavy, and that's because Irelia's kit works quite well at stat checking melee champions as opposed to getting kited by range champions. Even though you can stat check range champions, if you're just fist fighting like a Kiana, let's say, you're just going to win that in terms of stat checking. So in these matchups, the most important thing is understanding your limits. And by that I mean understanding how much damage you do, how much damage the enemy champion does, understanding when you can win all-ins and when you have the damage to kill. The second thing that's most important for stat checking is your W usage. W usage, or W, is incredibly important in these matchups because it's a very high value spell. So for stat checking, not only does it do a lot of damage in the early game, but it also blocks a lot of damage. So if you're using your damage at the correct moment in trades, let's say blocking a Kiana W, blocking a Yone Q3 knockup, blocking a Pantheon W, if you're doing these good Ws, you're going to be definitively winning these trades. The other thing that's really important for stat checking is passive. The Irelia passive gives her a lot of stats, so if you want to stat check someone, making sure that you have the passive up at the right time is really important. For cooldown matchups, these matchups are ones that revolve around a very crucial cooldown for the enemy champion. So for example, into Akali, it's her Shroud. Into Syndra, it's her E knockback. Into Annie, it's her passive. Into TF, it's his gold card. These are matchups that if they don't have their CD, that's a big window that you're able to punish. And typically these CDs are either movement spells like Corky W or Fizzy, or they are crowd control spells that they can use to peel you and get away from you. So in these matchups, it's really important that you're finding windows to punish them when they don't have their cooldowns. Finally, for high HP matchups, these are matchups where it's really important to conserve your HP. And the reason for that is these champions are very good at short trades and they're very good at bursting you. So if both champions, let's say you're playing against Vex, if you're in lane against a Vex and you're both low HP, it's very easy for her to one-shot you before you can get your damage off. Whereas if you're full HP versus a Vex and you land an E, you can actually all-in her and win the extended trade over the burst trade. So these are all champions that excel when the matchup is volatile and when you're low HP. So to win these matchups, it's really important that you conserve your HP. A big way to do that, honestly, is what I tend to do in these matchups in the earlier stages when I have less sustain, is actually just dropping CS. If there's a minion in the lane that if I want to take it, I'm going to lose 100, 200 HP, then I'm just going to drop that minion. I'm not saying you should drop every minion, but you really need to consider how much HP am I going to lose if I take this minion. And if it's going to be a lot of HP, it's better just to drop it. For the last matchup, I'm not going to go into the Yasuo matchup in this video. That matchup itself deserves its own video, so I'm just going to leave that alone for now. A couple of things to note as well. I would say that even with an understanding of what's important into these categories of champions, it's still really important to just have your basic Irelia mechanics. So, having good mouse accuracy, having fast Qs, being able to weave in your autos. These are just really important Irelia mechanics in themselves. There are, honestly, for Irelia, there aren't that many really important matchup interactions, I would say, especially into like more mage matchups. There are for sure those specific interactions, but what matchup knowledge really comes down to is one, understanding what category the matchup goes into and having that kind of brief overview of how you want to play those matchups, but also just understanding your limits. Understanding your limits is incredibly important for Irelia to know when you can find those all-ins. So yeah, that's kind of all for the general tier list. What I'm going to do now is show a few VODs from each category to really demonstrate how I play these matchups more specifically. Okay, so this is the first matchup we've got, and remember, this is Irelia versus Orianna. This is in that NPC category. Very squishy, immobile mage that Orianna is. She doesn't necessarily have any major cooldowns that you need to play around. As long as you're getting the wave on your side and you're landing your E, you'll win this matchup pretty hard. So in this case, Orianna is going to hit the wave a little bit early. It's going to be coming out onto my side. So I'm letting the wave come out onto my side. And then here I don't even land my E, which is a bit of a contradiction to what I was saying. But the main thing here is because of how much she's dodging, I'm able to get in a lot of auto attacks. And because it's an extended trade, I can then win the all-in. Let's go to the next VOD. This is going to be the same matchup, but a different VOD, because I really wanted to get the point across. So in this case, again, the Orianna's hitting the wave and pushing it onto my side. So now with the wave coming out to me, I can take some trades down the extended lane. I get my level 2, I land that E, and I just get a very easy solo kill level 2. So continuing in the category of these NPC matchups, one thing to note this game that I was a bit unsure of whether or not to include this VOD, because I did start with First Blood, so I came to lane with an extra longsword, but it's still a bit of an example of how to play these types of matchups. So again, I'm just letting the wave come out onto my side, and then here, looking for a trade, landing my E. It's not too hard winning because he has bone plating. But again, when I have the wave on my side and I'm landing these E's, I can win these trades pretty hard. I think ideally here, if I didn't have this First Blood, what I would do is I would just be a little bit more patient. I wouldn't have heavy traded so much level 1. I would have just let the wave come out more before actually trading. Because here I'm going to be trading in a lot of his minions, so I really need that extra longsword to make this work. But the main principle is just, again, letting the wave come out onto your side, not hitting at level 1, let them hit the wave. Then once it's on your side at level 2 and level 3, you're going to have a pretty easy all-in window. Okay, so for the final matchup VOD of the NPC matchup category, we have Irelia versus Lissandra. So in this game, I'm going to be following a very similar framework. Little mistake here, and I guess even making this mistake, it's not too bad because I get to show you the power of following this kind of framework, because even though I'm misplaying it, it's still the lane still turns out well for me. But yeah, here I should not go for this minion, honestly. She's level 2, I should just drop this minion and take the loss there. But again here, even though I take this horrendous trade, I just pop my pot, and now because I let the wave come out onto my side, all I have to do is land my E, get the wave on my side, land my E, and now I can just run her down the long lane and solo kill her at level 2. So yeah, this again, even with how much I messed up at level 1, just by following the rough framework of this type of matchup, I can very easily just win the lane anyway, because again, it's just a very straightforward matchup. Okay, so jumping into the Statcheck matchups, we have a very classic Statcheck matchup here with Irelia versus Galio. And you can see here he's in the Statcheck category. The reason he's in the Statcheck category is simply just because you have more damage than him. And there are some, this is a matchup where there are some nuances, but as long as you're, as long as you're playing Irelia well mechanically, there isn't too much that you need to know specifically for this matchup. As long as you just have general Irelia mechanics rather than like, oh, how am I gonna specifically use my abilities here or whatever, you don't need too much else other than just your raw mechanics to win this matchup. And a knowledge of kind of the stats in this matchup, knowing when you have more damage, when you can all in, that sort of thing. So very early on, I go for a little bit of a level 1 trade here with my passive. And again, a very important thing here is just my passive utilization. I think, yeah, in this matchup I get a bit of a weird lane gank. But I actually win this. This is again where the knowledge of the all-in comes in handy, because I know that I win this in the 1v1. This gank caught me a bit off guard, but here all I have to do is just flash auto and I solo kill without dying. But obviously, Graves being here, I have to flash. I TP back, and now all I have to do is just this again. This comes into the stat checking aspect. A very big important part of this of the stat check matchups is your W utilization. So here I'm utilizing my W to kind of block some of his damage in the taunt, and so now I have my passive. In my passive, I just stat check him. It's that simple. So yeah, let's go to the next VOD. So, Sylas, another matchup where again you have the ability to just outdamage him basically. Very important thing to know about this matchup is he's actually kind of a little bit in 3 categories. So I have him here in the stat check category, but he could equally belong in the cooldown or the high HP category. This is not a matchup where you want to be getting very low HP. You don't want to be heavy trading too much. If you are both at 50% HP, that's kind of the lowest you want to be. If you're at 200, 300 HP range, his W, let's say you're both 200 or 300 HP, he's very comfortable at that HP because he can just, with his burst and with his healing from W, he kills you before you can kill him at that HP. But if you're both half HP, he can, throw his abilities on you, and if he doesn't kill you, you're going to stat check him on the back end. So level 1 here, getting my stacks up. When he goes for these minions here, I Q auto. And then when he goes for that minion, I just auto onto him. And again, at this point, I'm just going to have more damage than him, plain and simple. Here I dodge behind my minion to avoid his E2. But if he were to land this, I'm still winning this matchup, this trade. So I'm still fine with that. Then here, I stack the wave. And I go for a dive. I know here he uses his E, and he has a short buffer between his E1 and E2, so you can see it up here actually. You can see how long it takes before his E2 goes down, so I'm waiting for that, and as soon as his E2 goes down, I just dash in and kill him. So yeah, this is a matchup where, again, you just win from through your damage. Another Irelia versus Ekko stat check matchup. This matchup, pretty straightforward. You just do more damage than him, especially early. If you have your stacks up, you can just all-in him. Now, in these VODs, I have gone for quite a few level 1 trades. I don't always do this. I do it if the opportunity looks good. In this case, it looked good to me because he had already kind of thinned the wave a little bit with his Q and stuff. So even if I go for this trade, it's not going to push the wave too much. So that would be the nice thing. And as you can see here, I'm just trying to stat check him a little bit. I have my passive stacks up, so I know I can Q forward. this is an important. This is a little bit of matchup knowledge that's specific to this champion. So here, when I go for this trade, I actually don't want to continue here because if I go for more, he's gonna get his electrocute and passive, which is a lot of burst. So I Q away to prevent him from getting that extra damage. So I end the trade before he can get a lot of his damage out, which is really important to do. So in this matchup, there is that kind of element of making sure you're playing around his passive as well, and his electrocute. But then yeah, through just making sure I'm taking good trades with my passive up and stat checking him basically. And then yeah, I get to this point here, and I can just stat check him. Like there's not too much difficulty to this category either. Let's go to the cooldowns matchups. Okay, so the really important thing for cooldowns matchups is ensuring that you're playing around the enemy's cooldowns. So if we look at the tier list, we see Akali is definitely in that cooldown category, possibly one of the most important champions to play around her cooldowns. All of these champions are very important to play around their cooldowns, but Akali very much so because her W, it's actually quite difficult for Irelia to fight Akali in her Shroud because, a lot of Irelia's damage comes through her auto attacks, which means that, if Akali's invisible and she's just queuing you, it's kind of hard to get that damage off. So very early on here, I go for a 3-stack, get the wave on my side, and now what you'll notice here is that Akali just used her Shroud, and with the wave on my side, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a trade. So her cannon minion is getting low right now, so I come back, I thin a minion, and just as she wants to walk up for that, now I all in her, and I can all in her here because she doesn't have that Shroud. If she had her Shroud here, I don't win this. She actually wins this because she's level 5 to level 4 here as well. So I couldn't take this fight if she had her Shroud. Maybe I could actually win it, potentially, because I got my cheater recall off, so I do have an item advantage here. But it would be a lot harder to take this, and it would be pretty... I don't think even if I'm not dying here, I'm definitely not killing her if she has her Shroud, because I'm just not going to be able to get my damage out. So, yeah. That's it for this matchup. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this is Irelia versus Syndra. It's definitely within that category of cooldowns based matchup, and this is a very, very classic example of a cooldowns matchup. And so what you'll see here is the Syndra goes for... I trade aggressively onto the Syndra here. Now, I can do this when she has her E off, but it's going to be hard for me to get an all-in here. And honestly, she should kind of have gone for the QE earlier, honestly. But yeah, I dash on her there, and now she uses her QE. I know she doesn't have E for 17 seconds, and that's her only ability to peel herself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk up as she... Again, notice here how I'm timing the... trade with her cannon getting low as well, so it gives her a lot of incentive to walk up here. Otherwise she wouldn't really walk up, but especially for Syndras with their splinter stacks, it's really... they tend to greed a lot for cannons. So I trade as she's going to walk up for her cannon here. She goes for the Q, and now I can just trade on her very easily there because she doesn't have her E and she doesn't have her self peel. Okay, so this is the final cooldowns matchup. I'm playing Irelia versus Taliyah. I let the wave come into my side because she's incredibly weak early, and this is kind of what you want to do in this matchup. I go for the QE. Now I'm just going to run her down the lane with my passive stacks. This is definitely a matchup that could just as easily fit in the NPC category. She's very immobile, she's very squishy, very weak early, very easy to kill early. But in my opinion, in my head at least, I view her more based around her E cooldown. And just the importance of playing around that. Here, she uses her E, and so now, just as her E is about to come up, because her E is roughly the same amount of time as my E, so as soon as my E comes up, I go for the trade. Now she gets her E up, but it's a bit too late, and I can get the kill there. So this is a great example of playing around those really crucial cooldowns. So that's going to be it for the cooldowns matchup. Let's go to the final category, which is going to be the high HP matchups. So pretty much in this early game, I'm going to take E level 1 and try and avoid as much damage as possible. And that's really the most important thing in these matchups. Again, if we can refer back to the tier list here, these matchups, the common thread of these matchups is that they're very good at killing you from low HP, but they struggle to kill you when you're at high HP. What you're going to see is throughout this whole lane, I'm going to stay very high HP. I'm going to get my minions where I can. I don't want to drop too many minions, but I also don't want to go for minions that I'm going to lose an absolute crap ton of HP for. So, for example, is there a... Yeah, for example, if I go for this minion here, if I try and, walk up and auto attack it, I'm going to lose a lot of HP for that. So I ultimately don't really want to... I'm just going to play to conserve my HP. And then because I'm high HP here, she's all the way deep in lane. Look, she uses all her abilities, and now she's just run out of damage. She has no more damage left, and I'm going to win because my damage comes from my auto attacks, and I don't run out of those. So yeah, this is a great VOD for showing the importance of conserving your HP in these burst matchups. I have one more VOD to explain this one, and then we'll end off the video. Okay guys, so in contrast to the other matchups that I've shown you the correct way to play them, this is actually me playing incorrectly and misunderstanding the identity of the matchup. So basically what's happened here is I'm playing Irelia versus Ahri. Ahri has Ahri here, which is a bit more of an aggressive, poke setup. So it's when she does poke me, it's gonna hurt a little bit more. And what you'll see here is I am letting the wave come in, but then I make a huge mistake here. She's level 2 to level 1, and I should just drop this minion. But what I do is I end up going for the Q, and I take a massive chunk of damage. And then for the rest of this lane, again here I go for this trade, and it's not a bad trade, but this would have been a fine trade if I just ended the trade a little bit earlier. But because of the bad trade I took at level 2, and because I Q onto her here again, I extend this trade too much. Now we're both at low HP. And when we're both at this HP, she's much more benefited from this situation than I am. And now at this HP, it's very hard for me to play the lane. I kind of have to try and get the wave in before she gets her cooldowns back, try and play with the bigger wave. And then here I go for an all-in. She actually plays it well, flashing the E, and I die. And again here, I don't have time to kill her in this trade before she can just one-shot me because I'm low HP. So this is a great example of the importance of really maintaining your high HP in these high HP matchups. So yeah, that's it for the VODs. Now let's go ahead and just recap everything. To recap, honestly, for Irelia matchups, I think it's a little bit overcomplicated in general. If you're doing a good job of getting the wave on your side and you have good E accuracy, you have good W usage, that's all just default Irelia mechanics. What goes into individual matchups is really understanding the limits of that specific champion, like I said earlier, and then kind of understanding the overview of how you want to play the matchups in general. I think understanding the different categories will also help you if you review your games. So for example, if I was into a matchup in the NPC category and I wanted to review my game, I'd really pay attention to my E usage and my wave management and making sure I'm getting a lot of waves on my side to find windows to trade with these champions. If I'm into Statcheck matchups, I'm really going to prioritize looking at that W usage and understanding how I use my W. Could I have used my W more optimally? The cooldown matchups, I'm going to be looking at moments that I could have potentially punished them with their key ability being on cooldown. And for high HP matchups, I'm going to be really looking for moments that I took unnecessary damage and got poked out, and how I could have potentially avoided that. So yeah, if this helped you, leave a like. If you have any questions, I have my Discord link down below, or you can just leave a comment. Thanks for watching.